A man is dead after being shot by police at Pearson Airport this morning in what authorities are calling an isolated incident, diverting travelers away from departures at Terminal 1. Good afternoon. We begin at Canada's busiest airport, where a man was fatally shot by officers outside the terminal after police say he produced a firearm.
The shooting happened this morning during a high-traffic time at the terminal, leaving many travelers rattled. Let's go live now to the airport, where officials are taking questions on the investigation. Let's listen in.
We know that the group was here for the purposes of travel. We don't know if that was the individual. Obviously, I won't be able to comment on that, but they were here for the purposes of travel.
And everyone involved in this dispute was from that one vehicle, or were they outside?
They were all, as we understand it, known to each other.
Chief, can you just clarify for us? Chief, there's a school bus on the scene. Is there any connection to the shooting at all?
No, to be honest, I think the bus is probably there for a reprieve station for staff, etc. Nothing to do with it.
Can you just clarify for us? I know you said that the person got in the hospital. That's what the SIU said, but it doesn't appear that there is a body still at the scene upstairs. So
no, my information is the. Okay, so I'm just corrected with the information. It was pronounced on scene, so there's probably still a scene that's being.
How are your officers doing such an incident like this? How are they doing?
Hey, thank you, Ryan. The officers obviously are being cared for as best as they can, not only from the organization, our police association, our wellness unit, our peers. They have to also undergo a long day with the Special Investigations Unit. So listen, I think, if you think about the lifespan of an officer is compounded by critical incidents and trauma that has impact. So, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the officers, but without a doubt, this has got long-standing impact, not only on them, but their peers around them. You come to Pearson, it is a really safe place to travel. And most of the reasons you're traveling here is to get to a place that you want to be that's got some positive at the end of it. And so when you police that environment, you also have an expectation that you're not likely to experience that here. So it does have an impact on our team, and I appreciate you asking that.
What can you tell us about the phone? Belong to the person who was shot? Does the vehicle belong to that person?
I don't know. I don't have the information of who the ownership of the vehicle is.
And they pulled a gun from the vehicle, or was it on his person?
We believe the incident happened in proximity to the vehicle.
Chief, what do you mean by proximity?
So that doesn't answer. Did he pull it?
I can't provide that detail.
Was there a knife involved?
No.
A couple eyewitnesses.
No, the officers responded to a firearm being pointed at them.
Has a gun been recovered?
I don't know that, because the scene is exclusively at the control of the SIU, so they have carriage of everything at the scene. Our team is there to support them with whatever needs they have.
What more can you tell us about the initial 911 call? Did it come from a person who was involved in the dispute, or was it from somebody outside of that group?
We understand it came from the public, from somebody involved in that group.
So it came from somebody amongst the three people involved in the dispute?
Yeah.
And Chief, you must have been briefed by your officer. How many shots were fired?
So back to my earlier statement, the type of evidence, as soon as a critical incident where the loss of life or bodily harm occurs, where we've been involved and a member of the public, the SIU assumes control over everything, even the scene itself. For example, even the firearms that the officers used. We have I don't have access to that information.
Did the police run aware of dispatch presence at the airport so that there was nothing prior to alerting to the need?
No, as I said to you, we responded initially to a call for assistance from a member of the public to help mediate and resolve the dispute.
The SIU chief initially said 3 officers discharged from fire. Is that down to 2?
That's correct. The information, as I understand, has been corrected. 3 officers did respond, but 2 officers were involved in the critical incident, so discharging their firearms. So the 2 officers are really the subject officers as designated by the SIU.
There was no tasers used, nothing beyond?
I don't believe so.
Was there any word about a firearm during the initial 911 call?
No, as I said to you, we responded to what we believed was just a dispute, and for quite a long time, for a few minutes at least, the officers did their best to try to mediate it. So at that point, there was no information of that level of risk.
Do you know what the initial thing was that happened with your security officers before your officers showed up? Is that?
No, I think so. If you travel to Pearson, you'll understand that it's a large ecosystem of a lot of people trying to maintain travel, right? So we're just one part of that. So in this case, there's GTA, there's security, airport security. If you've come here, you know you can't park at certain places. There are people that are responsible for that. So prior to us arriving, there are other people also in the equation.
Has next been notified?
I don't know that.
You mentioned this. Were they family? Are they a friend group?
I honestly can't tell you. Yeah.
They were known to each other.
Yeah. They were known to each other, yes. I'll take one last question if there is one, but thank you for all for coming. We will provide further updates at a later point.
Part of the wrap it up is that for the public, it looks like this was an isolated incident. It wasn't, as you said, to the airport, and there's no public safety concern. Maybe you could address that from.
Yeah, so I think in this day and age, the biggest concern obviously is there any threat or risk to critical infrastructure like airport travel? And I just want to clarify again, this was unrelated to any of that. It's an isolated, limited incident that was exclusively an interaction between our officers and an individual at the curbside at T1 departures.
So all these people were planning to travel, but they had a gun?
They were here for the purposes of travel. I'm not sure if all of them were. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, to recap now, a man is dead after an officer-involved shooting at Pearson this morning. And a warning now, some of the video in this story may be upsetting to our viewers. CTV's Allison Hurst is live at the airport this hour with more on the incident. Allison.
And as you were just hearing, Peel Police are providing that update. They're saying that this had nothing to do with the airport itself. Rather, officers were responding to an incident just outside above us at the departure level. Police swarmed Terminal 1 at Pearson Airport outside the departures area as officers worked to save the life of a man in his 30s shot by police.
We grabbed our luggage and we're crossing the crosswalk outdoors, and we heard something to the effect of 8 to 10 loud popping noises, 8 to 12 loud popping noises from further down the terminal.
It happened just before 7 a.m. Police were responding to a man in distress in an SUV at departures. According to police, he produced a firearm and 3 officers fired their weapons.
We looked through the glass outside and there was a handful of police cruisers rapidly moving in that direction, which was further down into the departure area.
The man was pronounced dead on scene, but no officers were injured. The incident caused chaos for travelers trying to make flights.
Huge traffic jam of cars, of passengers trying to get dropped off, trying to make their flights.
The entire departures area was blocked off for the investigation, with evidence markers scattered on the ground behind the SUV.
What we saw were officers basically assisting passengers, leading them up the rampway to get into the airport so they can make their flights.
According to Pearson Airport, flights have not been impacted, but they are asking all travelers to enter and exit by Terminal 1 arrivals because departures remains closed. Peel Police say there's no threat to public safety. Reporting live, I'm Allison Hurst. Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Allison. And we want to bring you now to CTV's John Musselman, who is also at Pearson Airport this afternoon. John, you were in that scrum with Peel Chief Duriepa. Tell us more. It sounds like this is all centered around what started as a dispute.
That's right. They made it very clear that this was an isolated incident outside the terminal at the departure level. Now, as you've probably seen some of the video this morning, there was an SUV on the departure level there. And what we're hearing from the Peel Police Chief is the fact that there was some kind of dispute within the parties there at that vehicle. And that's when they received a call from security and approached the vehicle. And as the chief was saying in that scrum, they were trying to de-escalate, diffuse the situation, but that's when it's alleged by police that a person in that group of people pulled out a weapon, and there was the gunshots fired by at least 2 of the officers here from Peel Regional Police. Now, they did try to perform CPR on that victim, They were unsuccessful. He was pronounced dead at the scene and is still here. We'll just throw you to a clip now of Chief Nishan Diriapi from Peel Regional Police. Here's what he had to tell us.
What our officers engaged in was a discussion with a group of individuals that were experiencing a dispute. Our officers spent an amount of time trying to resolve the dispute, an immense amount of de-escalation and engagement with the parties. However, abruptly, one of the individuals produced a firearm at our officers, and I must say that there were 3 officers that responded. As a result of that, to protect themselves and the community and the passengers here at the airport, 2 of the officers engaged with the individual. As a result, the subject was shot.
Now, it's way too early to get into some details. We do not know who this person is. We don't have a name yet or an age. That will all be part of the investigation. The SIU is here on the scene. They'll begin collecting information as well. As for Terminal 1, if you're coming out here, the only way you can get in here is come to arrivals. The departure level is closed off for the police investigation. So you have to come into arrivals, park in arrivals garage, and then take the escalator up to get to the departure area. We'll have much more on this story tonight on CTV News at 5 and 6. I'll throw it back to you.
CTV's John Musselman live at Pearson International Airport. Thank you.
Thanks.
And still to come this noon hour, we head to City Hall where Council is honoring a former colleague with a very special tribute. We'll explain just ahead.
But first to Vatican City, where mourners continue to wait in very long lines to pay their last respects to Pope Francis. The late pontiff's body is lying in state in St. Peter's Basilica despite earlier plans to close the building for the night. The Vatican kept the doors open all night due to the massive turnout ahead of Francis's funeral on Saturday. CTV Geneviève Beauchemin is in Vatican City at this hour. Geneviève, set the scene for us there. Some very long lines as Catholics gather to say a final farewell to the pontiff.
Day and night, people are filing in to the main doors of St. Peter's Basilica. Really an incredible scene to witness. All these people, a lot of them in silence, just proceeding through as they make their way to pay their respects to the Pope. And it's interesting because with every single one of those people, there's a story behind why they're there. We spoke to this dad who was there with his 2 daughters. They're from Budapest. They were actually on a cruise. It stopped in Rome, and they ran off the ship to try to line up to make sure that they could get a seat, that they could actually see the Pope, that they could witness this historic moment. And that father told me that a couple of years ago, the Pope had visited Budapest, and he had taken his daughters then, and now he took them again to see this moment here. And there's story after story like that, Michelle, people just talking about just how meaningful it is to walk through that basilica. The immensity of it all comes to them. They say the silence is also very heartwarming. It's also very touching, and they come out with a feeling as though they really were part of something very, very meaningful. Those crowds are just going through and day and night, as I said. They had originally extended hours. They extended them further overnight. The Vatican told people that they would just continue to have visitors pass through until the lines were over last night, but that didn't really happen until 5:30 in the morning. They closed the basilica for just 90 minutes, and then people started filing back in again, one after another. And this is expected to continue until Friday night, until the sealing of the casket ceremony will happen in preparation for the funeral. So very touching moments that are unfolding. There's also a meeting of cardinals that happened today. You know, there's 212 cardinals that have been summoned to Rome from around the world. Some are ill, won't be able to make it, but there are 135 voting cardinals. 2 of them have said they cannot come. They're too ill, so 133 will be voting. But there's still many of them that have yet to make their way here. There have been meetings of the cardinals who are present to look at the next steps of the funeral.
And Geneviève, what more do we know about the delegation that is representing Canada at this funeral?
We know that the Governor General, Mary Simon, will be coming. She will be representing Canada. There are other government officials who will make the trip as well. They'll be arriving tomorrow. There's a lot of people who were speculating as to exactly who will be part of the delegation. Of course, in the middle of the election campaign, Prime Minister Mark Carney could not make the trip, so he has delegated Governor General Mary Simon, which will be a very emotional moment as well. There's leaders from around the world who are coming. There have been people people from every continent, everywhere, that have signaled that they will be in attendance. There's new names of government officials and of world leaders that are being added every single day.
Okay, CTV Jean-Vier Beauchemin in Vatican City for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here at home, with just days to go before the federal election, U.S. President Donald Trump is wading into Canadian politics once again. During a ceremony at the Oval Office yesterday, Trump repeated that 51st state rhetoric and threatened to raise auto tariffs.
I really don't want cars from Canada. So when I put tariffs on Canada, they're paying 25%, but that could go up in terms of cars. When we put tariffs on, all we're doing is we're saying we don't want your cars, in all due respect.
The comments coming months after months of on and off again tariff threats from the White House. Right now, there is a 25% tariff on Canadian-made cars and parts that don't fall under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Free Trade Agreement. There's also a separate 25% levy on other Canadian products, purportedly to address smuggling in the U.S. CTV's Scott Hurst joins us now with more on this. And Scott, just as the U.S. president seems to be backing away from his tariffs on China, he's touching on Canada once again. What is prompting this?
Michelle, here it goes again. It seems that Donald Trump is once again taking aim at Canada after it appeared, at least some of the more direct comments and the more direct shots at Canada, including attacking our sovereignty, had been toned down over the past several days and weeks. But now Donald Trump is once again putting Canada directly in his crosshairs and potentially threatening even more tariffs against Canadian automobiles. So he made these comments yesterday from the Oval Office while signing other executive orders. Donald Trump injecting himself once again into Canadian politics. You could call it a late-inning curveball into our election with just days to go until Canadians will get a chance to vote. Trump repeating his 51st state rhetoric and threatening to raise auto tariffs, saying Canada would cease to exist as a country if the U.S. stopped buying its goods. And Trump saying again that the U.S. doesn't need anything from Canada, including oil and autos. But of course, in pure dollar figures, this is a trading relationship worth more than $1 trillion per year. Really, more than $3.6 billion goes back and forth across the border every single day. And we do know, Michelle, that the auto sector specifically is incredibly integrated between plants in the U.S. and plants in Canada, and oftentimes parts will go back and forth across that border multiple times before the finished product, before the consumer product. And as you mentioned, there already are 25% tariffs on autos not included in the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, the Kuzma trade agreement that Donald Trump himself actually signed in his first term in office, as well as other crippling tariffs and levies against Canadians and Canadian industries, Michelle.
There's a lot at stake right now, and the federal election campaign is into its final stretch. Election day is on Monday, and as we've seen for weeks now, this election has very much been about who's best poised to deal with President Trump. You have to think these latest comments will further fuel discussion on the campaign trail.
Yeah, Donald Trump has been, of course, front and center throughout the entire campaign, election campaign, that is. Early on, of course, there was the reciprocal tariff announcement, that flashy announcement that he had on the White House lawn that really brought trading partners around the world into the mix, where he was threatening them with massive amounts of tariffs. Of course, he's dialed that back a little bit, put a pause on those tariffs as he claims to be working out specific deals with many of these countries. But in the meantime, there still has been this whole host of tariffs against Canada. The Carney Liberals have really made this a backbone of their pitch to voters, standing up to Donald Trump and standing up to the trade war. And other parties have as well have pushed back against the harmful tariffs. The Conservatives as well have pushed back, but more dialed into change in general and avoiding a fourth Liberal mandate, as it is showing that this is really now a two-party race between the Liberals and the Conservatives. But as we get to the final stretch now, we're going into the final weekend. Of course, Canadians are voting on Monday. This, no doubt, will once again be top of mind for many voters and for the party leaders themselves as they campaign across the country in the final days of this election campaign, Michelle.
Scott Hurst reporting live from the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
We turn our attention to the weather forecast this hour, and you'll feel it outside. It is a lot warmer than it's been. We're nearing 20 degrees, and there's been some nice sunshine so far today. But the question is, Are we going to be getting some rain to kind of rain on our beautiful parade?
Well, we might be. If we do get a chance of showers, that there is just that. It's the slightest chance, isolated in nature, but you're right. It feels like summer out there already, and we haven't even reached the warmest point of the day. Let's take a look at our current conditions. Temperature-wise, we are already in the 20s in cities like Hamilton and Niagara Falls. A closer look at Toronto once again shows that it is a little bit cooler by the lake. Toronto Islands, for example, 11 degrees, but it's 19 already at Pearson. That east wind to blame for it feeling a little bit cooler along the Lake Ontario shoreline, even though those winds aren't overly strong. Now, there is some wet weather in some areas, mainly north of the GTA, in through the Barrie area, extending east toward Peterborough. We're holding on to a risk of a thunder shower for today. Our expected daytime high, 23 degrees, feeling like 26. This isn't going to last all that long, though. We'll talk about the change for tomorrow coming up. For now, Natalie, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, Russia launched a wave of attacks on Ukraine's capital overnight, just as Washington hopes to push the two countries to stop their ongoing war. At least 12 people were killed in an hour-long barrage of missiles and drones. It marked Russia's deadliest assault on Kyiv since last July. Top U.S. officials this week said they were pushing for a ceasefire deal that would see both Ukraine and Russia give up territory lost since Moscow's 2022 invasion. When Volodymyr Zelensky said he couldn't accept a deal giving up land, Donald Trump said the Ukrainian president was, quote, prolonging the killing field. Today, Trump lashed out against his Russian counterpart, saying, I am not happy with the Russian strikes on Kyiv, not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop. 5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get the peace deal done.
India's prime minister is vowing to punish those responsible for an attack that killed at least 26 people this week in the disputed Kashmir region.
India will identify, track, and punish every terrorist and their backers.
India has suggested Pakistan was to blame for supporting what it called cross-border terrorism. New Delhi has now downgraded diplomatic ties with Islamabad, suspended a water treaty, and closed a key border crossing. Pakistan has denied the accusation, and a previously unknown militant group claimed responsibility for Tuesday's attack. Back here at home, day 2 of city council meetings where a lot is getting done, and there's been a touching tribute that passed this morning.
Councillors honoring their late colleague Jay Robinson by renaming Lawrence Park Ravine in her memory. CTV's Mike Walker is live at City Hall this hour with the details. Mike.
Well, Natalie, it was a touching moment inside the council chambers here as several members of council stood up and remembered Jay Robinson as a dedicated public servant before unanimously voting to name a new park in her honor. Now, Robinson, who was a longtime councillor, passed away nearly a year ago after a lengthy battle with cancer. She served as both the chair of the TTC as well as the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee and advocated for the arts plus improvements to traffic and pedestrian safety and green space. Now, the new park named in her honor will be located in the Lawrence Park Ravine in the Don Valley West Ward, which she did serve. Her husband and children were at council today, and they say this is a fitting tribute.
Hard to put into words. It's an incredible memory in her honor because parks and trees were her passion. And this is a park that has a lot of meaning to the family as well. It's our home neighborhood. It's where we did birthday parties, tobogganing, walking the dog. I mean, all of us are in that park virtually every day. And so we couldn't ask for a better location.
She left a tremendous legacy. She really focused on issues around environmentalism, green spaces, tree canopy, as well as making sure that everybody was really enjoying the city and creating a city that was livable.
Another item on the agenda today is housing, specifically reviewing applications for multi-purpose rentals, plus freezing development charges that are set to increase on May 1st. That would be for 1 year, and both items were just debated and voted on here at Council, and they both passed. Reporting live inside City Hall, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, as the clock ticks down to Election Day on Monday, federal party leaders are out on the campaign trail. Liberal leader Mark Carney touching on the U.S. president's latest comments about Canada last night when he was in B.C.
President Trump's trade war has literally ruptured the global economy. He has betrayed Canada, America's closest friend, their most steadfast ally. Boo indeed, exactly. Keep going. This, this is a tragedy. It is a tragedy. But it's also our new reality.
Speaking this morning in Winnipeg, the NDP leader questioned the Liberal leader's portrayal of that earlier phone call he had with the U.S. president.
He said that Donald Trump respected our sovereignty. Now it's come out that he instead actually brought back up the 51st state and again threatened our country in that call. I'm worried, I think as a lot of Canadians are worried, that if Mark Carney's not being straight up with us, he's not going to be straight up with us in the negotiations.
Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was in Halifax this morning, pledging to scrap electric vehicle sales mandates. Ottawa has mandated that 20% of all new vehicles sold must be electric by next year.
Let me be clear, I have nothing against electric cars. If you want one, buy one. Free choice. Make your own decision. I encourage you to buy one that's made in Canada, and I go even further to say that a Conservative government would bring real change and axe the federal sales tax on any vehicles made in Canada so that you can save by buying Canadian.
Poilievre says if elected next week, a Conservative government will honor all agreements that have been signed for construction of EV and battery plants. CTV's Jeremy Charon joins us live with the latest from Ottawa. Jeremy, 4 days to go in this campaign. Talk to us about the home stretch here and where the leaders are focusing their energy.
Yeah, Natalie, absolutely. This is the home stretch, and I think we're going to see some very strategic planning here in the last few days as the leaders look to focus energy on areas in the country that matter most. Battlegrounds, BC certainly being one of them, which is where we're seeing Mark Carney start his day today. But I think that all of the war rooms here are planning the next few days and trying to maximize and take advantage of the time that is left. We're going to see all of the leaders spend time across the country over the next few days. Mark Carney, as I mentioned, starting today in BC. He's making his way to Winnipeg for a rally tonight. That's where he'll end his day. Pierre Poilievre starting his day in Halifax. He'll end in Saskatchewan. And Jagmeet Singh started in Winnipeg. He'll end in Toronto. I think that's going to be a theme over the next few days. We're going to see all of the leaders in several provinces in a day as they try and cover as much ground as possible and tighten up some of those races in ridings where their stats, their internal polling is telling them either they could try and hold on to a riding that is tight or flip a riding that is also tight. There are a lot of close races here, and the parties will be focusing very strategically on areas of the country where they think will matter most come election night.
Well, that's exactly it. You talk about tight races within ridings. What's the latest on where the parties stand nationally in the polls? The gap here really has been narrowing.
Yeah, absolutely, Natalie. Look, we've seen, in an exciting way in terms of a race to the finish here, a tightening of the polls, public opinion polls, in these last few days. The gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives down now to just 4%. That's as tight as it has been since this Nanos daily tracking started and since the campaign started. And so we're looking at some upward momentum for the Conservatives, a little bit of downward momentum for the Liberals, and that means that gap is only 4%. We've also seen, when you look at public opinion polling and specifically preferred prime minister, that gap has closed too. Mark Carney's still in the lead there with about a 10-point difference, but certainly things have tightened up there as well. So we're seeing things get a little bit closer here in the last few days of this campaign, and that's why we point to kind of some of these important ridings. When you look at regionally how parties have been doing, the Liberals continue to do well in Atlantic Canada, Ontario, and Quebec. The Conservatives doing well in the prairies and have a slight advantage in British Columbia. BC is going to be a battleground over the next few days, and come election night, I think we can expect to see all three parties, really. The Conservatives looking to gain and perhaps win the province. The Liberals looking to do the same in that tight race in BC, while the NDP is looking to hold on dearly to as many seats as they can in that province to try and maintain official party status. So I think we can expect to see a lot of action in British Columbia over the next few days and into election night, as that province could really be the deciding factor on Monday.
Okay, just 4 days to go. CTV's Jeremy Charon for us in Ottawa this hour. Thank you, Jeremy.
Anytime.
And a reminder to join CTV News on election night, Monday night, for results, analysis, and perspective from all across the country. Our coverage gets underway at 7 p.m. Eastern, led by Omar Sachedina and Vashi Kapelos.
Well, today has potential to be our warmest day of the year so far. I want to show you the almanac just to give you an idea of where we stand. It doesn't look as though we're going to be record-breaking as far as the warmth today. We would have to be warmer than 28.3 degrees in order for that to happen. But we're going to be well above seasonal. Average daytime high this time of year is 14, and we are forecasting 23. Great night to get outside if you're heading to Maple Leaf Square to watch the Leafs play in Game 3. Yeah, lots of sunshine, but we are keeping an eye on the radar for the potential for some isolated pop-up showers or even thunderstorms. Better chance, though, of that happening tomorrow night. We'll talk all about it with your weekend forecast after this break here on CTV News.
Well, it's the time of year where we just keep getting these little tastes of spring, even summery weather. 23 degrees for the high today, and return of the humidity as well.
Isn't it so fun to see those numbers? And I don't know about you and your gang at home, but this was the first day that I sent them without coats. I mean, they had hoodies on and things, but it felt pretty good. I wasn't sure if we should have done the raincoat, though.
Well, I think we're probably okay for today, at least here locally in the GTA. If we do get any rain or maybe a thunderstorm, it's going to be very quick, very isolated, very localized. Bit of a different story, though, for tomorrow. You might consider getting out the raincoats for the little ones and maybe keeping them around through the day on Saturday. Yes, we're getting some summertime warmth, but with that is coming the potential for another summertime type of weather. Yeah, thunderstorm activity. Weather is brought to you by the Pressler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. We've had mostly sunny skies through much of today. A little bit of cloud drifting in and out, so it hasn't been a completely blue sky for today, but it's been quite nice, especially with that warmth early on. I want to show you the current temperatures. We're on our way when it comes to the forecast daytime highs. It's 19 degrees right now in Windsor. It's 15 in Toronto. Some communities in between, like London, Hamilton, Niagara Falls, already in the 20s. And in communities like those I just mentioned, we're forecasting daytime highs in the mid-20s, feeling closer to 30. Yeah, it's been a little while since we've talked about humidex values. At the warmest point of the day this afternoon, might feel like 26 at Pearson Airport, but it's likely to feel more like the upper teens downtown Toronto, Toronto Islands, and really anywhere along the shoreline of Lake Ontario. Still comfortable, though. Overnight tonight, we fall to a low of about 10 degrees. That, too, is warmer than normal. Then tomorrow, there is a bit of a change. So these forecast daytime highs are seasonal or slightly warmer than, but for many communities, it's about 10 degrees cooler than what we're experiencing today. So you will notice a difference tomorrow, both in terms of what it feels like, but also the conditions. Now, it's not clear everywhere today. Take a look at the satellite and radar. We've been seeing a sort of rounds of rain around Peterborough, Port Perry, over toward Barrie and Collingwood. And this disturbance is doing something that's sort of known as training. And that's where the same areas just keep getting hit with rain over and over. So could see some measurable rainfall by the time all is said and done here today. Pausing this around this evening just to show you that I am anticipating mostly clear skies around the GTA. Increase in cloud cover for tomorrow. Chance of showers in the morning, but the better chance of seeing some thunderstorm activity develop begins in the afternoon and then more certainly happens as we make our way late Friday night, overnighted into the day on Saturday, and then Saturday morning there might be some lingering shower activity. Take a look at that, even in some higher elevation areas and communities further north of here. Might get some mixing or maybe even some wet snowflakes. I do also think that if we get some embedded thunderstorms, you can expect these rainfall amounts to be upped in Toronto. If we don't get the thunderstorm activity, which is a possibility, we can expect a little less as far as rainfall is concerned. 14 degrees for your Friday, 13 on Saturday, but then we have a nice rebound on Sunday. I think this is going to be the better day to get outside, lots of sunshine, and a high of 17. Looks like that trend continues into Monday as well. Michelle and Natalie, back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, we return now to our top story. A man was shot and killed this morning in an officer-involved shooting at Toronto's Pearson Airport. Let's bring in CTV's aviation specialist, Phil Dirty. Phil, you are the person we bring in to talk airport operations. This was certainly not business as usual today, and we don't see this sort of thing happen too often. What do you first make of what happened?
Yeah, good afternoon, Michelle. It's a tragedy that something like this happened at Pearson or anywhere, actually, a shooting going on. The thing is that the incident happened on the international departures area of Pearson Terminal 1. Lucky enough, it was on the driveway side and not inside the terminal. If it had happened inside the terminal, we'd be having a different discussion, as you know, they would have had to change all the departure gates. The gates that are in that area are specifically for overseas flights. So in the morning, it's usually a lot of flights down to Florida, down to the Caribbean, and domestic, which is on the north end of the terminal and in the middle for the U.S. departures. So it had a little bit of an impact where they had to shut down the entire departures level, and everybody had to come in through the arrivals.
Phil, we did get that update from the Peel chief at the top of the hour. Like you said, it was outside Terminal 1, and this was a dispute among travelers that escalated and then unfortunately became fatal. And while it is completely separate from planes taking off and landing at Canada's busiest airport, there is a domino effect. Maybe you could talk more about that.
Well, definitely. With those gates being closed, or with the departure level being closed, it does close the ramps and the highways getting to the airport, and creates a bit of a logjam of everybody trying to get into the arrivals level instead of the departures. So there are probably some flights that were impacted this morning, just slight delays while they got the passengers uploaded. But looking at the radar system, everything seems to be moving smoothly.
Well, that is good to hear. And you can only imagine for those folks who had some plans to fly out today, you see that this is happening, and there was a lot of uncertainty in those initial moments. The scope of what's happening is unclear, and when there are crowds of travelers going about their day, what happens on the airport operations side? Because I would imagine there's some protocols in place, especially before you really know how bad is this situation.
Well, the Peel Police, the SIU and the Peel Police are going to be going full bore into this investigation of what went on. But also, Pearson Airport has their protocols for incidents like this. So they'll be, making sure they're updating the security protocols inside the airport, and also making sure that everybody moves pretty smoothly.
Now, this was an isolated incident, according to police, which, might be reassuring for some folks. Now, and we're looking at some of the fallout, people having to try to walk to get into the terminal. Do you anticipate fallout to be felt throughout the day? You mentioned on the radar things seem to be smooth.
Well, yeah, there are a couple of flights that are going to be leaving. I looked at the departures, and the Air India flight and Emirates flights are just delayed about an hour and a half. And so that they should be getting off smoothly because it's outside of the airport and not inside the terminal. So there are different ways to get, for the passengers to get their check-in gates.
It's nice that there is an alternate option. Phil Dirty, our aviation specialist, we really appreciate your time today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Still to come on CTV News at noon, this is the final week for property owners in the city to submit their vacant home tax declaration. We'll have what you need to know when we come back.
The province announced it's cracking down on school boards that it claims are overspending despite running deficits.
We have identified numerous instances over several years where other boards have failed to address ongoing financial deficits. So we are moving forward with appointing financial investigators to look into the Toronto District School Board, the Toronto Catholic District School Board, and the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. And based on the outcomes of these investigations, we may take further action.
In addition, the Thames Valley Board in the London area has been placed under supervision following a convention trustees held at Toronto Skydome Hotel. Meanwhile, the Brant Haldeman Norfolk Catholic Board has been given governance expectations. That move follows a trip to Italy to select art pieces to purchase for schools.
The city is issuing a reminder to all homeowners that some important paperwork is due soon relating to Toronto's vacant home tax. Residential property owners have to declare once a year that their property was occupied and not left vacant, or face a tax of 3% of the home's value. Officials say they have already received declarations from more than 97% of all properties for 2024. All others are due by next Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. They can be submitted online, by phone, or in person. And get ready to dial a few different digits when calling some local numbers. Toronto is getting a new area code. The city has had 416 since the North American numbering plan was rolled out in the 40s. It was later overlaid by 647 in 2001 and 437 in 2013. But starting Saturday, anyone getting a Toronto phone number could have one that starts with 942. The new area codes are rolled out as numbers run out for the older ones.
Bryan Adams has announced 40 concert dates for what's being called his biggest tour in years. The Canadian rocker is set to perform 19 of those dates across this country as he hits the road with his Roll with the Punches tour. That's also the title of his upcoming 17th studio album. Adams says the show will include some new tracks as well as all the classics and some deep cuts. He plays Scotiabank Arena October 3rd. And still to come, Hudson's Bay Company is one step closer to closing all of its remaining stores. We'll have the latest on the liquidation of Canada's oldest company when we return.
Now more than ever, Canadians need to know where our leaders stand. CTV News keeps you informed on the issues that hit home. This election, connect to Canada's most trusted news source, CTV News, now more than ever.
Hudson's Bay Company is now preparing to close all of its remaining stores. Canada's oldest company filed for bankruptcy protection last month and began liquidation sales at 90 of its 96 locations across the country. Flagship locations in the GTA and Montreal area were excluded in case a buyer could be found. But a new court filing suggests that is unlikely to happen. Liquidation sales are set to begin at the remaining stores tomorrow.
In sports, the Blue Jays were looking to snap a 4-game losing streak last night when they wrapped up their series with the Houston Astros.
First pitch hit high, deep center field. Springer going back at the warning track makes the catch. All 3 runners will tag.
Houston took a 3-0 lead in the second inning, and they were able to hold off Toronto to win the game 3-1. The Jays will play the New York Yankees tomorrow.
And tonight, all eyes will be on Ottawa as the Toronto Maple Leafs look to extend their NHL playoff series lead in what's called the Battle of Ontario.
The zone drops for Domi. He's through. Domi scores! Max Domi's the overtime hero in Game 2.
Max Domi was the hero for Toronto in Game 2 on Tuesday. He found the back of the net in overtime to give the Leafs a 3-2 win and a 2-0 series lead over the Ottawa Senators. Game 3 takes place tonight at the Canadian Tire Centre. Puck drop is after 7. We are going to take a short break, but do not go anywhere because we've got puppies when we return. Well, you could say some 4-legged employees were added to the payroll at a downtown business recently.
Puppies were brought in during the lunch hour to mark National Stress Awareness Month. CTV's Scott Lightfoot has this stress-free story.
Lunchtime at Click Health on Bloor Street looked more like playtime today for both employees and their furry guests.
They have a lot of energy today, which I was ready for like a calm puppy, but they're just, I don't know, it just makes you, even if you're not a huge puppy person, you can't help but smile with how cute they are. And their energy is contagious. I feel like I just had another coffee.
8 10-week-old Maltese puppies were brought in over the noon hour in what's become an annual tradition at the company.
April is National Stress Awareness Month, and we were aware of that and just wanted to make sure that we're providing Clicksters with a way to relieve some stress in the office and to have some fun with their fellow Clicksters, all while playing with a few little cute puppies.
The company's been offering the de-stressing puppy time each April for the past 5 years.
I mean, it's hard to have a bad day when there's puppies around.
Many staff said the chance to sit down and pet, play, even take some selfies seemed to work to lower their stress levels.
I actually totally forgot that I was stressed today. So this was good. This is very helpful, yeah.
I do feel like I got a little stressed with them trying to escape, but stress levels of puppies still outweighs stress levels of work.
And as for the very active animals, well, the exercise seemed to lower some of their stress levels too. Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
That's the best.
We love to end on puppy stories. It just puts you in a good mood, and this would be a great day to go walk the dog. I mean, it's just beautiful, it's warm, and if that rain holds off, it'll be the perfect day.
Yes, and if you're heading to the dog park, if that rain holds off, it won't be nearly as muddy. And tonight, it's also going to be quite mild. Here's a look at our forecast lows. About 10 degrees here in Toronto overnight and waking up tomorrow morning. Now, tomorrow is going to be a cloudier and cooler day. We've also got an elevated chance of maybe some showers, but also the risk of thunderstorms. Check that out, especially Friday night, overnight into Saturday as a cold front moves through. Might still see some shower activity into the day on Saturday. Sunday looks fabulous, though, and Monday, bright sunshine and a high of 17 as well. Natalie and Michelle.
Thank you, Lindsay. And that is CTV's News at Noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and on our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Natalie Johnson. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6 o'clock.